well, the tank's still drying, like there are bits that are still wet, and I've put a bit of tape on the spigot to keep the turret and the body apart so they don't stick together, because that's untidy. However, the Aussies have dried pretty much, so we get Matte 86. That is Universal Army Green, and these Aussies are pretty easy because they are just in green. Like, there's no wizardry in their paint job, except working out how to make olive green interesting. And there's the dirt that's on them. That's going to be pretty good. What have I got? Let's brush. There we go. But first of all, it's really simple. Get some green and apply it, because their uniform is green. Again, being careful not to heavily saturate the model with colour. Well, not colour, but paint, because at this scale, over painting or getting too much paint on them is just it's very easy. And if you're going to paint with layers, it really helps to keep it thin. I mean, it's like any brushing. I never got anywhere with an airbrush, but I'm given to understand that thin, light coats are the way forward, and that would make sense. But an airbrush is just a palaver that I'm not prepared to go into. I've had one, but that was a lot of effort. And at the time I was using these Humbrol-based, oil-based paints, and frankly that was noxious. Put through an airbrush. Vaporizing white spirits, just probably not a good idea. So I gave it up. Then I went to acrylics. Loved acrylics, except for the plastic finish. It's not a painted finish. It's like acrylic paint in artistry. You're creating a layer of plastic, and they're nice to work with. Don't get me wrong. It's really easy to create quite a nice and interesting surface, but I'm afraid that it was just easy. Like, there was no challenge. So I went back to these enamels, because it is definitely more challenging, and it helped. But I think the effects that you can get and the surface that you can maintain with the enamel paints is superior if you do it right. But it is the learning curve of Everest to start. I mean, when I first started, I thought these were water-based. My dad gave me his old collection, and some of them were dry, and I went and put water in them, thinking that would, they are a learning curve, and they will teach you best practices, but not because you're having an easy time painting. Mind you, I know you can paint anything with these, and to a very high standard. I mean, the likes of Verlinden were using Umbral paints. I mean, they've changed the formulation a bit to sort of be a bit more like acrylic, but they're still the same. It's a much finer surface though, which is good on these lead figures because you can bring out the details that are there, which I found that I was losing them with acrylics because they're so thick and plastic. And as I'm predominantly a brush painter, well, exclusively, it seemed daft to be using paints that really work best in an airbrush, like acrylic is for airbrushes. It's awesome. You can do so much with it, but painting soldiers is a brush thing. I mean, there are some amazing painters out there who are doing a lot of the Warhammer stuff almost exclusively with airbrush, which I think is fucking incredible. But it's not where my interests lie. I mean, I've got a Warhammer army under here. It's alright. A lot of it's painted with Umbral. But then again, I got kind of obsessed with olive green, so my Space Marines are olive green. Do look fucking badass. Yeah. All over coat of olive green. You might say, well, that's pretty boring, but it's what you do afterwards. Because all of the stuff in real life is olive green. Like, there isn't a lot of variation except in the tones of green. Well, not the tones of green, in the various types of green that go into the average olive. Also, you know, there's the dirt on the uniform. But it has to be said, the uniform itself is green, so, you know, there's not much we can do about that. But getting the different greens within the uniform and the webbing, that's where the fun is. At least in my opinion. Humble though it may be. Yeah, hang on. Sorry, this isn't exactly thrilling. It's me painting a soldier, but like, if that's what you're interested in, and if 28mm is something you're interested in, these are gaming pieces, so that they're not Tamiya models, but for that they're really pleasing. You know, they have a pleasing level of detail, but are also small enough that you can collect hundreds of them and not fill up entire rooms with them, which is kind of what was happening when I was building 35th scale, because they're big things. You know, armoured vehicle in 35th is not small. This is. And even that Scorpion, Scimitar, sorry, isn't a big thing. We can line up quite a few of those before the shelf gets full. I don't know how. Next time I'm going to get another one. I think I quite enjoyed the build because it was so out of the ordinary. Like it's not a, it's by no means a kit in the tradition, in the, ironically it is traditional methods went into its manufacture, i.e. resin casting and pewter casting, but it's not a model kit like an Airfix by any stretch of the imagination. These guys come on quite quickly, and that paint's drying nice and fast. I don't know if that's my eyes tricking me or if I didn't get paint on those bits, but God, this music's awful. Why can't we play decent music on YouTube, for fuck's sake? That's ridiculous. Oh, but we own it. No, you don't. Twat. Particularly not when I paid fucking money for it on CD in the 90s. Like, my music collection is mine. Many thousands of pounds went into it, and you're telling me I can't use it in my own productions? I think that'd be a level of fuckery, if you'll excuse me. And last but not least, again, one colour, not very interesting. However, it's the combinations of different greens that we're going to use in the different parts of his equipment that make this even remotely interesting, because otherwise, well, apart from the fetishization of his rifle, and of course Vietnam is quite cool as a warfare, as a war, like it does have a certain cachet. I'm not saying that's a good thing, but it just sort of does. Clearly had the best soundtrack. And the Australians are nearest things to the Brits that were there. So they get let in as honorary British, which means I can build them. I'm really bad at building opposing forces. I've got some Germans, very few Japanese. I did buy a box of blackfellows for my Zulu Wars, but that really wasn't fascinating. It's all about the British units and Commonwealth units. That is to say, the Germans have good tanks. They're fun to build. And I am looking forward... Well, what I'm looking forward to is the Centurion by Rubicon Models, which they say is coming out in June, July-ish. That has me wetter than an otter's pocket. Many new Centurions to build. Along with their Vietnam stuff, which is going to be awesome. These boys definitely need helicopters, because clearly helicopters are cool. If I look at him, I think that's them covered in green. Anyway, back in a minute.